we will be right back. I hope. Let's see. Technical issues. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. Today is the first time in the series that we're talking to someone who is not based in Japan, but is focused on Japan. So I think it's an exciting new part of the series because actually I've realized that most of our audience is not in Japan. Most of our audience is in America and interested in Japan. So of course, connecting with you guys from around the world who are interested in Japan, focus on Japan in some way, is great for sustainability.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. So thank you. Welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Would you like to start just introducing yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Tina McCarthy. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, and I run a women's cycling group called WheelWomen, and it started about 8 years ago now, and it was kind of born out of my frustration at not finding any groups that I could cycle with that weren't, everything was so competition focused, and I had to be a racer or I had to be a certain kind of cyclist to join those clubs. And, one day I was in a bike shop and the guy in the bike shop said to me, if you want to start a women's group, or ride with a women's group, you'll have to start it yourself. So I don't think he ever actually thought I would, but I did. So.
Well, good for you. And we are so glad that you did. That's
awesome.
Well,
it's taken over my life now. So I quit my career as a designer, and I guess it kind of happened at the right time in my life as well, that I was wanting something different. And I just realized not long after getting into cycling that it was just far too much fun, and I just had to do it.
That's awesome. I read in Threadly, I can't say it. Threadly magazine. Okay, here we go. Your profile, and you talk about your first ride. Tell me about your first ride when you were first starting to get into cycling.
So I was kind of conned into this by my son, who at the time was probably about 14 years old. And he was at a new school and he was desperate to get involved in everything. And so they said that they were going to do this bike ride we have in Victoria, or in Melbourne, called the Great Victorian Bike Ride. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's great. And then he said, I think, they're looking for some parent helpers to come along on the training rides. And I said, yeah, no problem. I can do that. I used to ride a bike, not a problem. And so I remember turning up to that first bike ride with, 20 kids, teenagers, and the principal of the school, who was crazy about bike riding. And he had this big poster of Cadel Evans on his door. And of course, Cadel Evans is an Australian champion cyclist who has won the Tour de France and hero to just about every cyclist. And so I went on this training ride with my husband, and I remember, halfway through the ride, standing there on the side of the road on this grassy patch and throwing my bike on the ground in tears and saying, I just don't understand why they're all going so fast. This is ridiculous. They're children. I was so upset and so angry. And my husband just stood there and looked at me, and he was kind of like not saying anything. And I guess it was this epiphany moment where I realized that actually, it wasn't them going fast, it was me going really slowly. And I think I just had this realization that I'd sat on my butt for just far too long. And I'd put on a lot of weight, and here's me thinking I could do all the things I used to be able to do. I used to be a running coach, and as well, just as a part-time thing. And of course, always cycled. I cycled through parts of Denmark on this clunky old black bike many, many years before. So I kind of felt I could do it, but then I realized actually I can't do this anymore because I'm really unfit and I've put on a lot of weight. And I guess it was a wake up call moment.
Yeah. And I think, I can identify certainly with that. A lot of women as well. But instead of just saying, well, that's the way it is and nothing will ever change, it kind of motivated you to start this business.
Yeah, and I often think how did that happen? What was the thing that really triggered this? And maybe it was just the right moment in my life where I was looking for something and I needed something and I was a bit bored with, my design career. And at the time I was actually studying a Masters of Communication to try and re-energize my design career. I'd had a long break away from it after my son was born and wanted to get back into it. And, I felt like I was a long way behind. So doing a master's I thought would help me reignite things. But part of that master's course was actually, there was a subject called entrepreneurship. And as I had sort of done this first ride and kept going with a few more rides thinking, well, maybe I can do this. And I tested out a few, lighter weight bikes than the 22 kilo bike that I was riding around on. And, I ended up buying a secondhand, really lightweight bike. And once I had that lightweight bike, I kind of became obsessed with this whole idea of cycling. And so it was invading my studies and becoming a topic for a lot of the assignments I was doing, particularly the media portrayal of women in cycling. And what I saw were I suppose the deficits in all of that. And I guess it was when I realized that there was this huge gap in this market and this topic of entrepreneurship, and thinking, maybe there's something here in this. And so it ended up being an assignment. And I remember at the end of that assignment, there were 8 students who had actually they'd put onto this particular project. And at the end of it, I remember the lecturer said to me, "So you are going to do this, aren't you?" And I was like, well, no, don't be ridiculous. But part of me was saying, maybe I should. So I gave it a go. And as soon as I started, it just went bam. It took off like crazy, and took off so much I could barely keep up.
That's awesome. I love this quote when you're talking about you believe that a person's appearance is no barrier to getting on a bike. Everyone is welcome at WheelWomen, and there's an emphasis on no lycra necessary. And
Yep.
you admit that a lot of women already have a bike, the shoes, and the lycra, but what they're missing is the skills.
Yeah, so I think that, that people talk about the barriers to women's cycling, and I kind of say, well, the more we talk about barriers, the more it implants it in our heads that there is a barrier. In fact, there's not really any barrier at all. It's what you make. The barrier is what you make. And so you've got to get away from this idea of thinking that you have to wear lycra. You don't. You can wear whatever you damn well like. And also that thinking you can't do it is just kind of cheating yourself before you even get there. You can do it, but sometimes it just takes somebody to tell you or help you to learn how to do some of the things that are really basic skills. And that's what WheelWomen is about, is giving women the ability to join in classes and skill sessions so that they can kind of get those basic skills and get themselves going.
That's awesome. You won a leadership award. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, there's an award here called the Cycling Luminaries Award, and it's run by the cycling industry, so it's not voted by the public. And it was basically people in the cycling industry in Australia who voted me to have this leadership award because of the work I'd been doing to get women on bikes. So
that's awesome.
That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, congratulations. And I think a lot of the work that you do, and also I do, and a lot of social entrepreneurs are doing, it's expected that it's a charity, that it's not a business. But on your website, you talk about how you chose not to do a nonprofit, that you chose to do a business. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, my feeling is that we don't expect to go to a tennis coach and say, can I do my lesson for free? Or to go to golf lessons and do my lessons for nothing. The coaches that we have at WheelWomen have all paid to train to be coaches, and it's a job for them, even though it's basically a part-time or casual job for them. But they earn a little bit of money because of the commitment that they made earlier on to pay for their training. And so I think that it's fair to give back to that. WheelWomen isn't really about making money, and it's not about big profits or anything like that. It's a labour of love, most definitely, and we just scrape by. But I suppose setting it up as a not-for-profit, the way things work here, one of my big fears also was that once we end up as a not-for-profit, we have a board and we have, voting rights for all of those people on the board. And I have put my heart and soul into this for so many years now that I've kind of figured that if we have a board, all it would take is for a few people to say, well, actually, we don't like the direction you're going in. We want to take WheelWomen to racing and we want to do it this way. And they could vote me off the board and all of my passion and love would be out the window really quickly. And so I never wanted that to happen because I truly believe that there's a place for this kind of group to exist.
Absolutely. And this is something I really struggled with also starting my own business because I want to be focused on improving communities, improving the environment, and doing good work. But I also wanted to make a living from it.
Absolutely.
And I didn't want to do a nonprofit because, like you said, there's a lot of hurdles. You have to have a group, kind of a group mentality. You have to spend a lot of time trying to get grants. So the people who are running nonprofits actually told me if it's just going to be you and you're doing a passionate company, just keep it that way. Don't try to do the nonprofit. So it was really interesting for me reading about your choice as well and seeing how similar the Australian nonprofit versus social entrepreneur kind of idea is.
And I think the other thing is too that yes, when you've got that board, I agree, you kind of think, well, okay, we'd like to run some courses in, December of this year. Then it has to go to the board. The board has to decide whether it's a good idea. You have to get the board together, make a date for that. And then everyone has to go through the process of thinking about what this is for and what it's about and a whole lot of stuff that takes a long time to get through. But now if we say, maybe we should run a course in December, I'll just sit here and go, yeah, why not? Let's do it. And before we know it, it's up on the calendar and ready to go. So the decision-making process is really quick, and it means that we can kind of, if we get requests from people to run courses, we just do it.
That's awesome. And when I study the philosophy, I guess it is philosophy, of sustainable business or sustainable tourism, one of the tenets is profits, that you have to be getting enough money to run your business. And you mentioned that now during coronavirus, it's really hard. You've had to put your business on pause. And of course, a lot of people around the world are in the same situation. But I hope, when things start to recover, that you'll be able to start up again.
Yeah, I think there's no question we'll start up again. It was a pretty scary feeling at the start of all of this, thinking what is going to happen and where is all of this headed. But I feel that there's still real opportunity for us to keep going, and we're in a position where we'll just put everything on pause and we'll just wait until the day we can open up again. And a lot of people are still telling me that we can't wait for the day we can ride together again. So we're all hanging out for that day.
Well, I had no idea of the limitations in Australia right now during the lockdown. Can you give us a bit of an intro to that?
Yeah, so it's only in Melbourne at the moment. New South Wales and Queensland are doing a little better. So in Melbourne, regional Victoria, where Melbourne is located, or Victoria is the state in which Melbourne is located. Regional Victoria is on slightly less restrictions. But in Melbourne, we're on our 6th week now of, is it 6 or 4? I can't remember.
It's hard to keep track.
But we've got, we've got pretty tight restrictions. So we have a curfew at 8 p.m. every night. We have to be at home. We can't go beyond 5 kilometres from our house. We get 1 hour of exercise every day. We can only go out in public with one other person. So I can't go out with my husband and son. I choose one or the other. We have to wear masks. Otherwise, I think it's a $200 fine if you're caught not wearing a mask. When we go shopping, only one person from the family can go shopping. And whole bunch of other things. There are no shops open. It's only essential services like supermarkets, chemists, doctors, any other shopping like a hardware store or clothing or anything like that. You have to do click and collect. So you order it online and you can go and queue up in your car and they'll put it in the boot of your car for you.
Oh my gosh. Like in Japan, we don't really have any restrictions like that. Everything is kind of back to normal for the good and bad.
With envy.
Well, who knows? Like we're gonna have to look back on these strategies and decide in the future. It seems impossible to judge right now. But one of your big lockdown projects, which I want to show everybody, is how I found you. So give us an intro before I show the video about Japan, what I love.
Okay, so I think so many weeks of isolation brings a little bit of craziness and a little bit of boredom as well. And I'm studying Japanese and have been studying for a little while now. And one of the things I really like doing is showing my friends around Melbourne, and my Japanese friends around Melbourne, and saying, you've got to come and cycle here. So I saw this competition, which was a language competition run by the Japan Foundation in Australia. And there were several different categories, and one of them was this language section, and you could talk about something you love. And it kind of occurred to me while I was riding around Melbourne that every time I go out on my bike, where I live, there's a whole bunch of bridges that I have to cross. And I thought, this is just like the Shimanami Kaido in Melbourne. And so I thought that'd be a really nutty idea for a video. And so, and I had no feelings towards the fact that I might ever win it or anything. But I just knew that the fourth prize or something was like $500 worth of Japanese books. And I thought, yes, I really want the books. And so anyway, I set about writing this script for the video, and I got out there with my GoPro, and it was really difficult because I had to ride the bike with the GoPro on the selfie stick, but I also had to have the Japanese words written down because I knew I would just never remember it. And while I'm going over a bump, I'd probably forget what I was saying. So I had it written. So I'm riding, holding the selfie stick and reading at the same time. Not exactly safe.
No, but you're very technically savvy. Let's watch it, and then you can give us a rundown of how you made it after, okay?
Sure.
All right. Awesome. Enjoy, everyone. This is awesome. Japan, what I love.
私は自転車でしまなみ海道の橋を渡るのが大好きです。でも今、メルボルンはロックダウンしています。好きなことができません。ちょっと待って。メルボルンのしまなみ海道行きましょうか？はい、行きましょう。昔から広島に向かって自転車に乗っています。そこのトロの下です。ちょっと不気味。トタラオ橋でお三島まで 1.4 キロ。トタラオ橋は長い。私はケンジントンのストックブリッジを40回渡らでなければなりません。同じ地域より。私の大好き橋、小さくて可愛いお三島橋。でもこれはアルトナの小さい橋と同じだと思いませんか？こ これはメルボルンのウェブ橋大好きですね。夢サイクリングでできた友達またお会いできるのが楽しみです。
It's awesome. I love it. And I don't know how you did it, reading and doing video and cycling at the same time. You did an awesome job. How did you do in the contest?
Well, it hasn't closed yet.
Okay.
So initially the closing date was September the 16th, but they've extended that to, I think it's October sometime. And, when I put the video up, there were only a couple in the, I think actually only one video, my video in the language category. There's a couple of others now, but it's had well over 600 views. So I never expected that because it's just
awesome.
a little bit wacky.
But the thing I love about it is it's such a nice concept, right? Like you love cycling in Japan and the Shimanami Kaido. You can't do that. So you're introducing your local area in connection to how you would be cycling in Japan. So it's just so clever, and in terms of sustainability, sustainable tourism. I love it. Virtual tourism.
And, crossing all the bridges, it never fails to remind me of crossing the bridges on the Shimanami Kaido. And there's a couple of spots in Melbourne I go across, and as I look down the river, I can see like 4 bridges in a row, and I think, it's just like the Shimanami.
I love it. And so a lot of similarities, like at the end you show like walking through the red torii gates, which really looks like that red bridge that you're going through. A lot of similarities.
I know. And every time I go through it, in fact, I always call it the torii gates of Flemington. And my friends look at me and say, the what? And I say the torii gates. You know where the torii gates are? They've got no idea what I'm talking about. But I know exactly what it is because it just looks like, walking straight through torii gates in Japan.
That's great.
Kind of a modern take on it. But I really love it.
We got some great comments. Andrea Kitahara says, I always knew that Aussie women rock. I can't get back home, so there's a great way to connect with Melbourne. Love it. And,
that's lovely.
And Wendy Bigler says, love the video. And Molly gave you some clapping hands. So thank you,
lovely.
everybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
So another part from maybe your website or the interview with Threadly is talking about how doing your business is a labor of love.
Yes, very much so.
Do you want to talk about that? Yeah. So
it really is a labor of love. If I counted the hours and got paid for the hours I spend on this business, I'd be a very wealthy person. But the fact is, as you would know, running a small business, you spend hours and hours on it for very little return, but you do it because you love it. And, that's very much the case with WheelWomen. I do so much about the business and for the business just because I love it. And I love seeing what happens when women get on their bikes. And I just feel as though it's really giving something important to a whole bunch of women. And in return, that makes me feel really good. And that makes my days go by very quickly and in a very happy way. So I think that's the most important thing.
That's awesome. And you talk about your team. Can you introduce your team?
Yes, so we have some really amazing coaches. They're all there doing it just because they love it. But occasionally they get paid if there's a paid course, but we do a lot of free courses as well. And they'll just put their hands up and say, yeah, I'll do that one. And they always chip in with running rides weekly. So we run 2 to 3 rides every week, and all of those rides will have a coach on them. And all of the women have trained to be coaches, so it's been an investment on their time. And they basically are women who have either come through the WheelWomen program and kind of started off as beginners and ended up being great cyclists, but super, super passionate people about getting women on bikes, or they're women who have come to us because they've got years and years of experience and amazing qualifications to be able to do this, and they chip in as well. So I won't introduce each one individually, but we have a couple who are pretty amazing. Alicia, who is on the page, she started off as a really total beginner rider who came to one of the initial classes I ran 8 years ago, and said she just wanted to be able to ride her kids to school, which was probably 2 or 3 kilometres. And she was really nervous about getting on the road, and she did that first course, and she realised she really liked cycling, and she did another course and she realised she loved cycling, and before we knew it, she was just really taken by it, really obsessed with it, a little bit like how I was. And so as the years went on, she ended up being a coach. So Alicia now helps me with a lot of the admin work, and she keeps me organised because I'm a very disorganised person. I kind of come up with lots of these really big ideas, and she grounds me a little bit and keeps the admin happening, which is great. And we also have Judith Arndt, who has joined the team recently. I basically met her because she's a neighbour, but Judith is actually a former world champion and Olympic medalist. And she's a world champion in time trial and road bike and, mountain bike, everything. She's one of the greatest women cyclists that's ever walked the earth. So we're pretty lucky to have her on the team. She has an awful lot to be able to share, to inspire women. And that's not because we get women to a racing stage. It's about making women believe that they can actually do this. And she's a perfect person for that.
That's awesome. What do you think's the biggest hurdle to get people to start cycling?
Fear.
Fear.
Just fear. And it's not just fear of, my goodness, bikes are scary. It's fear of how I look, which is a really big thing. It's fear of not knowing what to do, fear of looking silly, fear of not understanding how to ride on the road, fear of thinking I must ride on the road when you don't have to. So there's a whole bunch of things that go with fear. And that's really what WheelWomen is about, to try and break down all of those little bits that prevent women from riding. And that's why we say no lycra necessary, because that thing about how we look is one of the really big things.
Yeah. And then what steps along the way have you noticed really help people overcome that fear and gain more confidence?
I think probably one of the biggest things is actually being with a bunch of other women who feel exactly the same. And to find that you're not alone in that space is a really big icebreaker for a lot of women. And, the kind of aha moments that they have when they come to the classes and go, yeah, I think that too. Yeah, I feel like that too. And they're talking about, oh, my husband always says, you've got to go faster or you've got to do this. And then you'll hear the next one go, yeah, mine does too. And so there becomes this real bonding between a shared experience of what they've had in the past, which actually grows into this shared experience of what they learn with us. And so I think that's probably one of the really big things that happens. And it's also, I think, one of the big changes that happens is women realising that it doesn't matter what body shape they are, they're very welcome to come to the classes. And so, any size, any shape is fine with us. And when they realise that there are a whole bunch of other women who are every size and every shape, it makes them feel at home.
Yeah, wonderful. And you also post a lot about health and how it's helped you, but also I think this week, isn't there a special event for Wmns Health Week?
Yeah, so in Melbourne we have, or in Australia actually, it's a national event, Wmns Health Week, which is run by an organisation here called Jean Hales for Women's Health. And it's one of the key women's health organisations here. And Wmns Health Week is usually really big. They have events on all kinds of categories across the week. And I happen to be an ambassador for Jean Hales for Women's Health. And tomorrow, in fact, they'll be doing a bit of a Facebook post and live to air about heart health. And they've asked me to contribute to that one because I actually do have coronary artery disease. And it was discovered only about 18 months ago. Unfortunately, it's a genetic condition. So my father died of a heart attack at 52. And as the years went on, I kind of had this really big fear, thinking, am I going to make 52? Am I going to get there? And, I did. But a few years beyond that, I just didn't feel right. And I had this cold and cough that just wouldn't go away and feeling really run down. And, I'm one of these people, I never go to the doctor unless I really have to. And I hate taking tablets and all of that stuff, like many women. And we ignore getting the tests that we should have, and we ignore going to the doctor, and we put everything off. I happened to go to the doctor and said, I keep coughing and I get, it's like my chest gets so sore when I cough. And he asked me if there was any history of heart disease. And when I told him there was, he sent me straight off to get a stress test with a cardiologist. And, of course, that's when you have to run on the treadmill, and I'm hopeless at running. But as I did the stress test, they were all saying, wow, she's like superwoman. She's just going to keep going. And it looked like I was super fit, and it's because I ride all the time. But the cardiologist was really smart, and she said, you've got this family history. I just want to do one more test. And that was when they put the dye into your veins and put you under the big scanner and watch what's happening. And it was only then that they realised that I have a 50% blockage in my left anterior descending artery. And so that kind of explained a whole bunch of stuff that was going on. Particularly the thing for me was the fact that I can ride up a hill and think, I'm actually really fit. And there's this woman riding next to me who's a real beginner, and she's like chatting up the hill and, like she's ridden this 100 times, and I'm like, panting away, thinking I must be really unfit. But actually, it kind of explained what was going on, and it's because I work really hard to get that oxygen pumped through. But it was also having those tests done gave me the knowledge, and as they say, knowledge is power, and it was the power to now know what I need to do to stay fit and healthy, because as the cardiologist and my doctors have said, had I not been cycling, it could have been a very different story at this point in my life. So I feel forever thankful that I actually did take that step. So Women's Health Week is all about making sure women take the time for themselves and go and get those tests.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you did, and I'm so glad you had a great medical system supporting you and going the extra step to check on possible hereditary problems. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was, I have to say, it was a bit of a wake-up call, because I never really imagined that anything like that would happen, because I cycle heaps and thought, I'm just going to go back to the doctor after I've had those tests, and she'll just say, you're fine, not a problem. And so it was a bit of a slap in the face when I was told, and thought, wow, this is a real shock. And I definitely had to change the way I cycle. I've been told I can't really do interval training anymore. Not that I ever really did. And in some ways it was a welcome relief to know I shouldn't do interval training anymore, because it's kind of hard. But also climbing really big hills, I probably shouldn't really be doing that. But, really long and undulating rides, they're perfect for me, and that's just the way I love it. So having that knowledge now keeps me safe as well.
That's great. Yeah, having more knowledge so you can make better choices. It's really important.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tell us about ThisGirlCan.
Yeah, so that's a really awesome campaign here in Australia. It stemmed off a program in the UK called ThisGirlCan, and Victoria, the state which I live in, bought the campaign. And when it first came here, they put a call out for ambassadors for the campaign, and I can't tell you how many people sent me messages saying, you should do this. And I was like, oh yeah, here we go, another thing. And but anyway, in the end, I sent in a campaign and told them the story about when I was riding through the city one day, not long after I had started cycling. And I was with a friend, and this guy turned, or I heard this voice behind me say, God, look at that. Fat chicks shouldn't wear Lycra. And I was really like, excuse me? And I didn't stop, but that comment stuck with me for a really long time. And I felt really embarrassed and horrible when I got home, and I felt like I don't want to wear this Lycra top anymore. I just want to wear a baggy old T-shirt, and baggy old T-shirts actually look worse usually. But it really stuck with me. It still sticks with me because I felt kind of disgusted, but really angry at that person too, for how dare you make a comment on what I wear. I'm not talking about what you wear, so what gives you the right to tell me what I should and shouldn't wear? And so I told the story about the fat chicks shouldn't wear Lycra, and they really loved that, and so they chose me as an ambassador for the campaign. So I'm like their cycling ambassador. And the campaign has these amazing ads of women in all shapes and sizes, just really ordinary women doing the things that they love in sport and getting active, whether that's walking the dog or going for a jog or playing basketball or hockey, going for a bike ride. Yeah, it's a fabulous campaign.
That's awesome. We've had some great comments. Mary says, it gave you even more power to succeed.
Yes, it did.
And Allison says, of course, it was a woman doctor who diagnosed your heart. The whole discussion is fascinating, why you chose not to be an NPO, your passion, the women you have inspired to work with you. Thank you, Allison.
Lovely.
Yeah, awesome. Let's talk about Shimanami.
Yes, the place I love.
So first, the last tour you came was in 2018. Can you tell us about that trip?
Yeah, that was an awesome trip because we did the Shimanami Kaido event ride, and we actually had an invitation from the Hiroshima government, and I was invited to speak also at the Shimanami Cycling Summit event. And, you know, that was kind of funny because when I was asked to speak at it, I thought, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. I thought, you know, there might be like, 80 or 100 people there. That's not a problem. I can do that. And I turned up and there's this huge hall and there are thousands of people there. And I suddenly went into panic thinking, oh my God, they didn't tell me about this. So we go into this room and it was like sitting at the United Nations with, everybody's names sitting in front of them and rows of tables and translation devices, headsets. And I suddenly just thought, oh my God, what have I said I will do? But anyway, it kind of went down quite well because I opened it in Japanese, bad Japanese, but they really loved it. And I showed a little clip about what we do at WheelWomen about getting women on bikes. And after that event, after that summit or the evening event, we did the ride the next day. And to this day, it was one of the most happy days I think I've ever had of sharing the experience with a bunch of really great women, meeting some incredible people along the ride who were, cheering us on. And just the whole buzz of the day, and also, of course, seeing the incredible organisation from the Japanese authorities to run an event so big. It was just wonderful.
Yeah, wonderful.
Sadly, we were actually coming back this year for the 2020 event, but of course, it was cancelled. We can't travel and we can't enter Japan at the moment. So,
yeah. In your website, you talk about why Japan and your love affair with Japan. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that started a long time ago. So my dad had this, my dad was a designer, so of course that runs in the family, and he had this work colleague, and I always remember her name. It was Motoko Hirahara, and we called her Moko, and she came to Australia, and she stayed with us for what felt like a month, but it was probably like 3 or 4 days or something. But this woman had this amazing effect on me that she was so magical and beautiful, and she brought me one of those little wooden plates that you hang it with a rabbit on it that you hang at the temples. And of course, she obviously knew something about me because I was born in the year of the rabbit. So, and I remember one night she cooked sukiyaki for the family, and she had everything so beautifully organized, and it took her hours and hours. So this woman had this huge impact on me, and I always thought I really want to go to Japan. And years later, my older brother actually won a scholarship to go to Japan. And when he was studying engineering at university, and he came back and he brought me back a little happy coat, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And he talked about, the people he met and this dreamy woman called Midori. And I just had this thing about Japan ever since that I really wanted to go. So it wasn't until I was at university and studying graphic design, and we had a study tour to Japan, and I was lucky enough to be able to go on it, and that was it. It was all over after that date. I was completely obsessed.
That's great.
And then, of course, when I met my husband, and he's an architect, it turns out he was completely obsessed with Japan as well. So I guess it was a match made in heaven.
So you're hoping to do the Shimanami tour next October, is that right?
Yeah, if we can. Obviously, things are a bit up in the air at the moment, but yeah, we would really love to get back. And I kind of made a commitment to all of those people who was so looking forward to being there this year, that if we can't go, I'll do the tour again next year.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I really hope you can. But I think cycling should be one of the easier activities to start back because you're outside, you can social distance. So fingers crossed that by next year, autumn, everything will be...
Yeah, we hope so. We hope so. I think that one of the difficulties for us at the moment is that we can't leave the country. So that's a little bit agonizing at the moment. We're one of the few countries around the world that has a ban on residents leaving. So, even if Japan opens its borders at the moment, we can't actually go anyway. So that's kind of tricky.
Are they stopping inbound travel as well? Nobody's allowed in?
There's very few flights coming in. It's mostly just residents returning, but Melbourne has stopped all international flights coming in because we had an issue with the latest outbreak that we've had, which has caused all the issues. Apparently, has come from hotel quarantine, getting out of the hotels. So, yep.
Okay. Well, let's imagine that you will be able to come next year and tell us about the 2018 trip. Like, what did you do? Where did you stay? Tell us the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of an interesting trip, and I suppose it's a bit self-indulgent from my point of view, because we spend a lot of time around the Shimanami area. Of course, I'm totally in love with Wmns and the Shimanami Kaido. And so the plan on any of the tours is that we start in Wmns and then we ride the Shimanami Kaido and then head back. And then we do a little bit of exploration around Wmns. If we can, we usually make time to go to the Hiroshima Peace Museum after we've been to Shimanami. And then after that, we'll head to Kyoto and have a look at some of the temples because even though I feel like I've been there 1,000 times and seen every temple 1,000 times, I know others haven't. And it's kind of one of those rites of passage. If you go to Japan, you must go and see Kyoto and the temples. And so we do that as well. But the comments I get from people is that they're so glad that we start in a kind of what they call a country area, and then head to the cities afterwards, because it gives them a really interesting perspective. And I like to think of it as the whole tour as showing people the real Japan, or what I call the real Japan, because we don't do the tourist things. We do the things that I actually like doing. So if that means going up to a little temple I know about, then we'll go and do it. And if somebody sees something along the way where they think it looks interesting, we stop and say, let's go have a look. So it's not a tour. It's kind of a bunch of friends going out and just having a really great time and stopping and looking when we feel like stopping and looking.
Yeah, that's my kind of travel. You have to be flexible. You have to go by the weather, but you also have to go by how you feel. And so it sounds like a lot of fun. Allison is saying, what do I need to do now physically to prepare to join you on the Shimanami next year?
Oh, that's a good question. So I put out lots of details for riders who are thinking of joining, and I say you should be able to ride at least 50 kilometers in one day, and you should be able to keep to a speed between 20 to 25 kilometers an hour. So I always classify this tour for our group as not for the beginner riders, but it's for those who have a little bit of experience. But if you start now, you can do this. If you're not experienced, Alison, you can definitely do this. Just keep riding. It's kilometers under the legs that makes a really big difference.
Yeah, just keep getting out there, keep putting more kilometers under. But in terms of gear, there is some gear that would make it more comfortable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely cycling pants, or we call them nicks or bibs. And I always recommend wearing the bibs, which are the shorts that have the straps that go up over the top, because aside from the fact that for bigger women like me, they're a bit more flattering, but they also don't kind of pinch in where you've got a few rolls where you don't want rolls. And they kind of stay in place a little bit better too, but they have a chamois padding in the base of them. So when you're sitting on the bike for a whole day, they definitely make a difference. And of course, you can wear a t-shirt, but if it starts to get hot and sweaty, you can get cold, particularly if we're riding a little bit later at night. So Lycra is really good because it actually draws the sweat away from your body and it dries really quickly.
And speaking of kit, you have some great Japanese designs. Did you do that yourself?
Yeah, I did. I suppose sometimes I feel a bit guilty thinking, is this cultural appropriation, or I'm not sure. But everybody here goes, it's a bit like when I go to Japan and I see English writing on T-shirts, everyone over there goes crazy about the English writing. But here everyone goes crazy about Japanese things. So yeah, the Japanese kit is always really popular, and some people tell me that they want to come on the tour just so that they can get the beautiful cycling kit that goes with it.
That's awesome. Allison says, your photos are awesome. Burmy Girl says, hello from Bermuda. I love cycling too. Allison says, excellent info and advice. Thank you. Thank you all for your comments. It's awesome.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
I hope Allison can join us.
Yeah, Allison is based in Yamaguchi, between Yamaguchi and Fukuoka, so definitely around the area.
Yeah, fabulous.
Yeah, I'd love to join as well. Let's make it a big Japan-based group. We'll join you guys.
Oh, that would be so much fun.
That'd be awesome.
You know, you've no idea what it's like when you get a whole bunch of women together. And I've talked about this often, that, you know, sometimes you can get a bunch of women together and you kind of wait for the friction to start happening and the little bit of bitchiness happening maybe. I just don't see it. All I see is these women having a blast and just having such a great time and becoming such wonderful friends with each other. And I think probably for me, one of the biggest things is the fact that when the women do this tour, they step out of their comfort zone big time. And a lot of them are really not sure they can do it, and they're very nervous about taking it on. And I keep telling them, yes, you can do this. You're going to be fine. And it's that lack of self-belief. And then they get there and they do it, and they walk away from it feeling like they have really achieved something. But the other part of that is also showing women that actually cycling can take you to so many places in the world, and it shouldn't just be confined to your neighbourhood here. And it presents incredible possibilities to go places.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about the Shimanami event that you're joining as part of the tour?
Yeah, so that was the 2018 event. Gosh, I'm not sure how many riders there were, but thousands, maybe 5,000, might even have been more. There's probably about 8 different routes on that particular event ride. And I know, I think in Japan, riders have to enter a ballot system to get an entry for that ride. And we were fortunate because we're an international group, we get a kind of like a direct entry. And so the next event will be the same. We take on the 70 kilometre course. So we ride the 70 kilometres in one day, which is basically from Imabari back to Onamichi. And last time we did it, we were met by television crews and radio people and newspapers. So it was a lot of fun. They got us up on the stage and did an interview for the Onamichi TV news, I think it was. It was a lot of fun.
And it looks like you had some cultural things along the way as well?
We always do a few cultural things. I try and add in what we can. One of the biggest cultural things is not the typical tourist stuff. Again, I have a lot of friends in the area who are cyclists that I've met over the years, and they will generally come and join us for a day here and there and do some cycling. And I think that's probably the biggest cultural thing, is that the women get to meet other women from Japan, and also some men as well, and experience their perspective and their take on riding in the area. That to me is the biggest cultural bit. But we always, of course, have, amazing Japanese meals, and the girls go to bathhouses and experience an onsen, and then they, get dressed up in the yukata and all kinds of stuff that they've never experienced before. And I think this is why I really love Japan for cycling, because a lot of women in the group will say, hey, we should go to Italy, or go to France and watch the Tour de France and do some cycling. And look, that's really great, and I love the idea of it, but there's a whole bunch of other people doing that. I know a fair bit about Japan because I've travelled there now for so many years, and I feel as though I've got a lot more to share about that experience. But I think the thing about the difference of going to a European location versus Japan is, if we go to a European location, it's kind of same. It's, we're a European-based society here in Victoria in so many ways, even though we're quite multicultural. But our way of life is very European. And if we go to Japan, I feel like it's a complete change. It's like a culture shock for a lot of people in many ways, because there are things they never expect, even right from the start when we arrive at the airport and they go to those toilets and they all just walk out with this look of awe on their faces going, I didn't know how to flush the toilet. And, the toilet lid lifted up. And all of that stuff, and I just stand there and laugh and think, okay, here we go. And so I love that about Japan, is that it offers such an incredible cultural difference to what we're experienced with here.
That's wonderful. And it's so nice to see people who visited Japan fall in love with Japan, want to come back again, and then bring more people back to Japan to do active, sustainable travel. This is awesome.
So that's one of the things I've really noticed, is that we've got quite a few I call them repeat offenders on the tour, and they just keep coming back year after year because they love it so much. But a lot of them have also actually then decided to go with their families as well, and because they've loved it so much. And it started some really serious love affairs with Japan, with quite a few in the group. And so Japan is kind of like we feel like it's our sister in many ways at WheelWomen, and we have very strong connections with Japan, and of course with the Shimanami area. It's not so much a connection with Tokyo or Kyoto and that typical, golden triangle of the tourist routes of Kyoto, Tokyo and Osaka, to step beyond that and to come to Hiroshima offers a real point of difference. But I think people realize that Hiroshima is just such an amazing place, and the people who we've met there are kind of different to the people we would meet in Tokyo. And in fact, we find them quite similar to Melbourne people, that kind of sense of humor and pretty relaxed, pretty chilled. And unlike in Tokyo where they say, if it's 8:03, it's 8:03 on the dot. But in Hiroshima, if it's 8:03, it could be, 8:05 or, 8 o'clock or something.
A little bit more time relaxed. Yeah. But it's so inspiring to hear, because this, in my strong belief, is the future of tourism anywhere, especially Japan. No more are we going to have tour buses dropping 100 people at a time at small venues. Yeah. No more over tourism. We just can't do it. It's been a problem for many years, but now, especially after coronavirus, it's just not possible.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point, because it's incredibly frustrating to go to some of those places and you arrive there and there's 5 buses parked at the front and you just think, oh, okay, we'll just deal with it. But we tend to not go to a lot of those places anyway. I think a really great example is when we're on the Shimanami, we go to Mt.Shirataki, and that temple on top of the hill, it's a real should I say it's a crap place to get to on a bike, because it's super steep. It's like a 15% ride, and we usually end up walking up it. But what a spot! What an amazing place to see. It's like being suddenly immersed into this other world of, it's like this heavenly place floating in the clouds, and you look down on all these islands, and this little guy working in there comes out with his brochure and wants to talk to you. And I just find that a far more fulfilling experience than queuing up with 1,000 people from a bus tour who are looking at a temple for 5 minutes. And so I think that's a really interesting point, because I'm constantly asked by, people in Japan, oh, when are you going to come? Are you going to bring, 100 people next time? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to bring 100 people, because Japan can't cope with me taking 100 people. And I don't want to go and stay in a place that can take 100 people. I want to stay in a place that can take 10 or 15 people. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And there's so many wonderful, wonderful places in Japan, that in the rural areas. Was it last year? I think it was. Yeah, last year I did a little bit of a tour with a friend around the Kita Hiroshima area. And we went to a soba making place, and we had this great soba making experience with 2 of my Japanese friends and my husband as well. And it was so much fun. And then afterwards, we did a ride on e-bikes afterwards, riding around the this Kita Hiroshima area through the rice fields. And we stopped and we saw a snake, and we walked up to a temple, and just really casual and chilled day. And it was just so lovely. But that's what it's about, experiences like that.
Amazing. Sorry, I had turned off my mic for a second. So to recap what I said, this is going to be the future of tourism, is sustainable tourism, which we've wanted to do for ages. Now with coronavirus, it is the only way forward in terms of travel and tourism.
Yeah.
I'd love to end with one of your ideas that you wrote on your website about IchigoIchiE.
Oh, yeah. I love that concept.
Yeah, tell us about it.
So, IchigoIchiE is about being in this moment right now, and appreciate this moment, because we will never experience right now ever again. And for me, that's so much about cycling, because when we're on our bike, the rest of the world is outside of this little zone we get into, and we're noticing all kinds of things while we're on the bike, whether that's I talked about in my post the swans who are nesting near the river who hadn't nested there before, or the new little plant that's popped up in the weeds next to something, or all these little moments that I think of when I'm on my bike. And one of them is the Japanese words that pop into my head that I think, oh, I know that word. What does that mean? And I kind of get into this zone of thinking, oh, what does that mean? Oh, maybe I can use that in a video. And I just enter this totally different world. And IchigoIchiE is also very much about what our tour to Japan is about, is experiencing these moments that are so incredibly special, particularly when we meet with my friends there in Japan and cycle with them, because we're all experiencing this incredible moment together that we might never have again, particularly for some people who may never come back to Japan because for many reasons they can't. And so that for me is so important in my life, and particularly at the moment I've been trying to tell people, we're in this really rotten situation of lockdown, and we've been here for 6 weeks or something, and we've just been told yesterday by the government that we've got another 4 or 6 weeks or something to go before we can really have any freedom. And you need to really think about the small things in life and appreciate those in the moment in which you find them, and that's what makes lockdown really easy to deal with, I think.
Yeah. And doing research for this talk, I was reminded, because I did triathlon for years, and like you said, you were a running coach as well. And then I had kids and, got busy with work and stopped exercising, stopped riding. And so doing this research for this talk has really inspired me to dust off my old bike, to get my Lycra out, and to get out there, because you have reminded me of this mindfulness that is so important right now as a way to stay healthy, but also to release the stress that all of us are kind of bottling in right now.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing about bike riding, is it's so good for so many things. It's the physical health, the mental health, social connections. It's great for the planet, but at the moment, more than anything, I think it's great to have that mindfulness and to release that a bit of that stress. And I only get an hour a day to head out at the moment, which is kind of difficult when I'm used to being out for several hours. It's very hard to go further than about 20-25 Ks at the moment, where we are in the middle of the city. But I call it my hour of power, because it gives me the power for the rest of the day to chill out, do think positive things, rather than getting bogged down in, oh, why can't I go out, and I can't go shopping, I can't see my friends. I've been on my bike, I'm happy.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. That is our hour. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the inspiration. Everybody go dust off your bike. Get on the bike, no matter what you're wearing. Just try it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And I hope we'll be able to meet in person someday. But until then,
I hope so too.
Yeah, until then, we can all cycle and keep communicating and keep supporting each other. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been fabulous.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you for your wonderful comments and questions today. Tomorrow we have another, tomorrow is off. I'm sorry, I have a business trip. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we have great talks. So I'll put up the schedule today. And we have a last comment from Molly, says, thank you. Allison says, beautiful, IchigoIchiE, what a lovely person you are, Tina. We'll share. Aww. Thank you, Joy and Tina. Thank you, Allison. And a final wave from Molly. Thank you all for joining. And please take care of yourself wherever you are. Andrea, wonderful. Hang in there the rest of the lockdown. See you in Japan, maybe. Thank you, Andrea.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye.